Hi, Howard. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you,
Excellent.
Gala?
Excellent. Well, given everything happening in the world right now, I kind of like white knuckling a lot of the time, but
Yeah,
yeah, getting through it.
I
Um,
haven't noticed.
I don't know where you're hiding to not notice it. Um, so we're here to talk about the art of business, and we also, in preparing for this, also thought of this potentially as a business of art because there's kind of two sides to this here, and like this whole world of things to talk about too. It's like at the intersection of art and business and creativity and building a career out of this creativity. And what does that mean, right?
Hmm.
So hopefully in the course of the next hour, we're going to be just providing some inspiration, coming up with some practical tools, giving some perspectives about what we picked up along the way, right? And so I think it'd be really great to start off so everyone has a bit of context. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I went to New World. I graduated in '89. My focus was music, specifically the drums. And what happened then? I went to college and I majored in music in college. And then I moved to New York and I had my drums and I found life to be a little difficult as a drummer in New York. And I said, there's probably some other things I should pursue. And I got a part-time job at a credit union, and it turned into a full-time position. And I ended up being the manager, and then I ended up getting my MBA. And my focus was accounting. And then when I graduated there, I worked in the music industry for a little while as an accountant, and then I just started my own business. And inevitably, when I tell clients who sign up for our services that my undergrad and background is in music, they're like, "Oh my God, what a drastic change!" And in my mind, it's really the same thing, what I do for clients with the bookkeeping and specifically this software called QuickBooks is basically I keep the downbeats in the schedule going so that we all meet at the same juncture. In January, certain things need to be done for the previous year. 1099s need to be go out. And the same way I learned how to play drums, QuickBooks is a software, accounting is how would you say, like a construct. It's like a grid of sorts, right? And once you know how the system works, after you've developed some techniques or whatever, you can be pretty successful at it. So to me, it's not like I was a painter and then became an accountant. I was a musician, specifically a drummer, and I became an accountant. And now I go back and forth. And I find that with the clients who have any element of creativity, they really enjoy what I bring with my background, not being in accounting from the start.
Thank you so much. So there's at least two things there I just wanted to dig into a little bit more. This last thing you just mentioned, it's interesting. The clients with creativity, that your background in music, um, that they can connect to that resonates with them, right? That excites them, right? How do you determine someone's like creative or not creative? I mean,
Well,
I'm of the opinion that anyone can be creative. It's like how you do something, how you approach something. So how do you feel that your background as a creative person affects how you work, like what you give your clients?
yeah, I mean, for the most part, my clients, even if they don't have artistic backgrounds, if they ended up entrepreneurial, they are probably a creative of some way, right? There are occasions, and I'm happy to say this off the start, where maybe I'll meet a potential client that I feel does not get me and I don't get them. And so maybe they're not a good fit, right? And that's a beautiful thing about America and 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 having a business and being entrepreneurial. So there's some people that I don't gel with, but typically if it's someone who's entrepreneurial, creative, trying to find new ways of thinking about a solution to a problem, and they either have some sort of creative background or not, but they're creative because they're entrepreneurs, I'm probably going to connect.
So finding the thread of connection through these other activities, things like that gives you more of a rapport for that work you're doing with them, oftentimes. Yeah, because it's a human connection, bottom line. You're doing this transactional thing, right? You're providing the service, but you're working with people.
That's right.
And clients are always people. And
That's right.
so connecting with them as people is like the most meaningful thing. That's where you build trust. That's where you build that connection. And that's when, that's when relationships expand,
That's right.
in
That's
my
right.
experience.
And
So a
you
little
take
bit,
something as tedious as accounting and you make it fun, then it's like, oh, then the word kind of spreads, like, hey, my
that's
bookkeeper
interesting.
actually have a
Well,
good time though.
one of the reasons I decided not to be a professional musician at some point, and I'll share a little bit about my journey. So I graduated from NWSA in '88, also from the music school with a piano emphasis. And I went to university and was studying, arranging, conducting, and I went to film school. I went to business school then too, and I got this double major in music and business administration with no intention of actually working in the music business. Just didn't want to go to publishing these, like the music business back in like the early '90s, which is a totally different scene. It just didn't interest me. I started producing concerts and festivals, and then I started producing video games. And then there's this thing called the internet. And I was out in San Francisco in about '95. I started building websites, and I've been doing that ever since. And so I built a career doing all kinds of websites and campaigns for huge brands. And at some point I feel like I kind of lost in it, because I always look back and say like, wow, if I just put all of that effort into music, what could I have done with all of that, But then I also think it's like I have this really great career that's allowed me raise a family and support, my family and do all these things. And also, which I know we'll get into, fund my fun, which is a phrase I like to use, because I've been producing music all this time. There's periods where I don't do anything, and that's just a lack of practice. That's just me not being able to stick to things sometimes. But I've released albums and I've toured and I've performed at festivals and galleries, and I've had a creative life in parallel with all of it. It just means I've had to work double, triple time to keep that going. And I find myself now at a place where I'm finding a really amazing balance. I'm finishing a track a week. I'm working a lot of projects right now, and I'm balancing that with a full-time career. And so I find it really interesting how they start really folding into one another, and the skills you pick up in one can totally be leveraged in the other, and vice versa. And I'm finding that happening now. But this is 30 years in. I'm really finding something clicking because I've been dedicated to that path and completely disoriented at times throughout. What am I doing? Who am I kidding? But now I'm finally feeling it's wow, okay. It's clicking. Something's I'm, feeling right about it. And I know I'm going to be disoriented again, and that's fine, So where were we? I would say bring it back to this idea of a common question we hear as question. I know that I ask so much. I continue to ask is how do we make it? How do we define making it in business or making it as an artist? We all want to make it. That's something from a very young age. It's how are you going to make it? We want to make it. What is that? How is that defined? How do we measure that? How do we know that we've made it?
Yeah. All right. So my take on what does making it mean is, and it comes from experience working with my clients, especially the ones that are startups. The goal is to get the startup to a place where they're not worried about paying last month's bills, right? It's getting to a place where you can be strategic about where your business is headed. And that strategy or that place, in my mind, is a beautiful place to be, because it's okay, I have a decision to make and I have to make that decision by the end of the month. But it's still a month away, right? When and it's inevitable in the startup phase. You know, businesses just need to get enough cash in order to pay the bills, and the bills are the ones that piled up from last month. That's a very tense place to be. And so the triage situation when I work with clients is, hey, we got to get you to that place where you're a month ahead, and you can think about what you want to change this month so that next month you're in a better place. So to me, the first level of making it is just getting to a place where you can be strategic.
How important is the role of and because I think there's so many parallels here, like my world changed about 3 years ago when I started like working with a financial coach, because my finances were a complete mess. They've gotten marginally better since then. But the idea is that whole like not catching up and not like just playing survival mode all the time. If you're doing that in a startup and that's your goal, right? It seems that really reflects what we're doing in our personal life too, right? And how we have a handle on that as well too, because it maps over, right? So would you say that that like the same kind of discipline where you're really trying to get to that place? It really takes fortitude, right, to get to that place where you're like sustainable to the point where you're not surviving anymore, and not all businesses get there, right? What does it take to get to that place where you go from surviving to a place where you're 1 month ahead and you actually be strategic then?
Yeah, well, I mean, with an accounting mindset, it's basically revenue needs to exceed expenses.
Mm-hmm. More money, less expenses, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to say that's what I love about accounting is you kind of just say, well, that's pretty much the definition, right? Like if you have expenses exceeding revenue, you're constantly in a stressful situation.
I heard an interview with a jazz saxophonist, like a woodwind player today, and also got a master's in math while he was like studying and like in the studio with like Wynn Marsalis and stuff, and so he was teaching math. He's a math professor, and he basically said the same kind of thing you were saying at the beginning. It's like numbers don't lie. It's like it's all right there, and there was something so comforting about that, and the structure of it is something that's so familiar as a musician, right? So I'm an artist, whether it be a musician, visual artist, dancer, actor, whatever we're doing, right? Chef. I mean, so many things we be creative at, right? We want to create a business. We're going to go take it into the world, make some money, build a career, all those things, right? Where do we start? How we build a business around that? Because it's a business, right? Just going out and doing that thing, you are taking that entrepreneurial startup mindset.
Yeah. So the funny take I have on this is occasionally I get asked, someone refers me or whatever, and they're like, hey, can you help me blow up a business plan? And I'm willing to pay you for how many hours it'll take to help me with this business plan. And I'll say to them, well, what do you sell? And they're like, well, we're trying to identify what that is. And I'm like, and they say, well, we think the business plan will help it. And usually, and I learned this, I had a great professor of entrepreneurship when I went to school. And it's basically just make a sale, right? Sell one thing. You could even sell it to a relative, because if a relative's dipping into their pocket to buy something, that's sort of a good sign. But if it's someone who's not a relative dipping into their pocket to buy something from you, that's probably a better sign. And if you can do that once, then think about like, well, what just happened there, right? And then if you can make another sale, right? If you can make a few sales and get to the point where, well, wait a second, I'm really making some sales. Now can we do something? And it's like, okay, now we have some actuals we can base our projections off of. And now we can kind of build out a business plan based on something that's really happening. So the truth is, I don't really take on clients that come to me with just like, hey, can you help me build out this conceptual thing? I'm like, not really. Like, there's plenty of other CFO for hire or whatever that you need that'll help you do that. But really, I like to see something happening, and then we can sink our teeth into both the actuals and how that would play out if we ran some projections, right? So for me, it's sell something.
I love that. It's not just offering it for sale, but what does the market want? You know, by actually having someone, like you said, reach in their pocket, which no one does anymore, right? And so
Right.
someone taps and gets it from you. It's like, what is that? Because it has some kind of fungible value, right?
Right.
And we need that for anything we're offering for sale, because if it doesn't have value, if something hasn't been established yet, you know, I'm thinking as an artist and everything, for value that hasn't been created yet by the marketplace, right? It's like finding a way of actually creating that value because it has that value for someone before you could actually scale it at that point, right?
That's right.
Your point. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. So going back to this idea of making it, and I don't know how many like painters you work with as clients, right? But just anyone coming in saying, I want to like add this many zeros to what I'm making. I want to, have these big lofty goals for what I'm going to do for my revenue stream, sell my business one day, whatever it is, be like massively successful. What is the first thing they need to figure out? Besides like having something to sell, that's a good one. But it's like in terms of expectations, what kind of advice would you have there? I think in terms of like, go ahead.
Did you say painter?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know, like, because I'm thinking it's just like, yeah, it's easy for me to see like someone who has a lot of tangible product, but doesn't have a brand yet. It actually creates that like really subjective appeal, the subjective brand valuation that takes time to develop, right? Or incredible luck.
Yeah.
And
so it sounds like what we're getting here is like, how do you create the momentum so that the revenue is recurring? Yeah, and the other thing that I love about businesses, successful businesses in the startup phase, is they usually have lots of ideas and all that, and it's just like find the one thing that you can say this is our flagship product, and just wash and repeat that until it gets some kind of like lift, right? And then you talk about what you can provide that, if you're already manufacturing this or you're already providing this service, then it's easy for you to then add this other little thing that then becomes another service and then another service, right? So, I think of a diner, like the diners offer so much, right? But it's like, what are they known for? Like just being a diner, right? But like an In-N-Out burger, it's like, they got, actually I'm unfamiliar with In-N-Out burger because they don't have them here in New York, but they're everywhere. Like 10 years ago, everyone talked about In-N-Out burger, like, oh, it's the most amazing concept and what have you. And it's like it's a limited menu, right? I don't know if you know anything about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and then they have,
I totally know. It's like a monthly, like, yeah.
Oh, In-N-Out burger? Yeah, I've never even been there.
In California, it's just we have them all over the place. And so, but it's like a limited, it's like a monthly fix. Go to In-N-Out, treat myself to like something just delicious.
It's a bad example. I don't know how that popped in my head, In-N-Out burger. But Amazon was books. Amazon was books for years.
It was books. Yeah.
Just do one thing, that movie.
One thing. Yeah. No. And so many marketers will say that. Say one thing, do one thing. Right. It's like, what is the one thing you want people to know about your product or your service? And you have to be like one thing, and it's just like you said, like it focuses your offering. Also, then again, and I'm remembering, because there's a lot of examples of this, but the one that pops up for me is what I remember about like Trent Reznor in the late 80s, Nine Inch Nails, who's doing like a lot of film scores now. Is like really fantastic. I really respect this person as a producer and a musician. Back before Nine Inch Nails really took off and got really big in college radio and just kind of launched his career, he had like 4 or 5 music projects. There was like an ambient project, and he's like the industrial thing that was Nine Inch Nails is just one of several things that he was basically market testing. Yeah. Like he put a lot of stuff out there because he was very versatile as a composer. Like people don't understand that. He was a really good producer. And so he put out a lot of different things that happened to take off. He's like, oh, I'm going to put all my stuff in that. And that's it.
And
That's
that
where
was
the
the
career
9
went.
Inch Nails thing? That was what took off?
Yes. Yeah. And so there's a
There was
lot
a
of
time I
other
was
things that he was working on. Yeah.
there was a time I was very into Trent Reznor, and what I read about him was he was a perfectionist, and he was like working at a studio, like mopping, and like the chief engineer was like, "This guy is obviously so focused on quality, right? His attention to detail was insane, right, from an early age." Yeah, I mean, love Nine Inch
Which brings us to one thing we talked about. What was the definition of luck? Because we always talk about fortune and luck, right?
Oh,
Is
hard work meets opportunity.
preparation meets opportunity is the one I heard. And so yeah, the mopping the floors in the studio is like the attention to detail and all that preparation meets the opportunity. Hey, you want to sit down and work on this thing? And so remember that everything we're doing as students, even as professionals, right? Think about all this as preparation, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
we always think there's like a big break. There's a number of big breaks. There's breaks happening all the time. It's like, are you willing to like when it pops up, just stay absolutely and do it? I mean, that's something
Oh,
that's something I'd want everyone to know is like you don't have to say yes to everything, and it's important to say no and everything. But if you make a decision out of fear, thinking you might like lose something, fail at something, you're not good enough to do something, it's like that's the place, that resistance there is the thing that will hold you back, I would say, more than anything.
yeah. I mean, we're at the age, we're at the 50-year mark here, where the
I'm not
people who
I'm
have
not
been,
gonna say
yeah,
you could
sure.
divulge
Well, I mean,
that. No.
we could just do the
I'm
math,
I'm timeless.
right? But the people who have interned for me have like gone on to like amazingly successful stories, right? It's like we're beyond the point where it's it's like I've seen it happen where like people who were diligent and conscientious as interns have achieved levels of success that I'm still trying to get to.
Do you think it's because maybe the pathways are paved better now? It feels technology has enabled things, and and
Well,
of course, go ahead.
I think we're all putting in hard work, but then sometimes the opportunity help knocks on for it's the other side of the equation. So
Yeah.
everyone's putting in hard work, and then some people really uh, leverage that opportunity to the next thing. I'm just pointing out that it's not always the people older than you, because the people older than us are becoming smart.
Well, I think passion and excitement and the thrill of actually creating actually gives way to cynicism and gives way to other things, and starts happening. And I really hate that there's like there's a dominant narrative right now in the culture that like 30 is the kind of threshold you got to make it by 30. And there's poet laureates that didn't start like publishing until they're like 55. It's like there's no rules about that, and not even probabilistic thing. It depends like what genre you're talking about and what audience you're talking about, right? But this whole idea that you got to make it early, I think that what happens is people lose their the ability to just risk everything and go for it, and do that. And we start getting fearful. We start getting really locked up and start getting cynical. Like it's not for me, it's not for anyone else. And start getting like bitter and angry about people,
Yeah.
and some of those like interns that are making it, it's like, how come it happens to them? I deserve it more kind of thing. It's like, turn that into something,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah. I mean, that's a catalyst then. But to like take that next step is, I think, where a lot of people get blocked, right?
Huh.
Like, if you want to then be successful, you see yourself doing that, go do it. Go do it. Start kicking down some doors. Use all the connections you have from all this time you've been working and this kind of like universe of contacts you have, right?
Yeah. But I also think we all have different like we achieve a certain goal, and we're like, okay, we achieved, I got to this level, and now I can start playing music again. And it's like, maybe I gotta wait until I'm like, okay, I gotta get to that next level, because I got a daughter who wants to go to a school, you know, an expensive school. So I'm like, okay, whoa, I gotta build up another level here, right? So it's like, it's back to that strategy point. Like, yeah, in a month, but hopefully it's not a month, but in 6 months from now, I have to be at another level. So I need to pump the gas in this respect or that respect or whatever. So we all rise to the level in which we're like, okay, this is kind of cool, right? And so some of these interns that I worked with, they wanted to get to that high level, right? And they just kept going.
That's what they value.
Yeah.
Is that right? And so I think that when the effort really aligns with what is valued, I think that's where success might emerge. Because I remember my first manager, the concert producer back in Miami, like I started working in like 92, 93. And he asked me an amazing question, like first day at work. I worked with him for like 3 years. And he said, how do you want to feel? And he actually said, how do you want to feel when you're 50? And I went down this whole thing about like, you know, how much money I'll be making and all the things, like this whole vision for myself, right? And he let me finish my whole diatribe, right? And he says, you know, it's not what I asked. He says, how do you want to feel when you're 50? Not what you want to be doing, not what you have to be is like have achieved. It's like, it's not what I asked. And I mean, it's really good to have all the other things in mind, like really like quantitative things, right? But he was talking like more qualitative, like, well, you know, what is going to make me feel like it was a life well lived, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's like that's something I've still been like piecing together, and like it's still like shifting and morphing with time because my values change, right? And so back to the question of making it, how do we know if we made it? It's good to maybe ask ourselves, how do we define making it? What are our values?
Well,
Like,
I
is it,
still go
is it,
back to if
yeah,
you can reflect, if you have a minute to reflect on whether or not you've made it, which is just another form of strategy, that to me is making it. Like if you can
that's
get
awesome.
rid of
Mhm.
the of like that to me is the goal. Just get out of the um like daily crisis mode,
Mhm.
right? It's inevitable at the startup phase, but that to me is what you want to avoid all the time, right? You know, so Jeff Bezos, love him or hate him, right? You can find on YouTube he has like a 2-minute lecture on how important sleep is to him. And you're like, okay, well, this is going to be ridiculous. But then you listen to it, and you're like, wow. So he's saying he needs to get 8 hours of sleep because he may be asked to make a decision, and maybe he's being asked to make 1 or 2 decisions in a month that are like really impactful for his business. But the side thing that he says in this 2-minute video is people will come up to him and say, hey, great quarter, Jeff. And he's like, I have people that work for me that are worried about the quarter. I'm thinking about what's happening 5 years from now, right? It's a great little 2 minutes, right? Well worth the 2 minutes, right? And so to me, we're all not running Amazon, but we're all kind of running our own little show. And so if you can be like, oh yeah, I got to make a decision this month about that I think that's the place to be, right? As
And
opposed to
yeah.
as opposed to having people knock on your doors and be like, hey, you got to owe this, you owe this, right? Or hey, where's this, or where's that?
Yeah.
It's like that to me is
And have like the clarity and the presence and all the like data you need to make a good decision, right? Whatever that, and what constitutes a good decision at that point? How do you know it's a
yeah,
good decision when you're making it?
sure.
I'm asking you. I mean, it's not a
Well,
rhetorical
that's why
question.
he
Like,
says he needs sleep, because he's
yeah.
got to really consider like whether it's going to be, he needs all the bandwidth he possibly can
Hmm.
uh, obtain to make this decision. But the thing is, when you get to that point where you can be strategic, the goal is to like always be conscientious of how do I avoid going back into a crisis mode, like a moat. You always got to have a moat,
I like the moat. So a certain amount of your, it's
which
like
is a
when you're an
Warren Buffett
entrepreneur.
thing.
I
It's one
like
above
that.
that always
No, I've never heard of
talks
that. Never
about
heard of the
moats.
moat. But the idea of, I mean, I know, for example, like the periods of like I'm going through a period now where I'm doing like mostly freelancing, and like 30% of my time is hustling the next project. I mean, it's just doing sales, right? And that's part of it. And I always have to be thinking, like I have work now through the end of February, but I'm thinking about March already. It's like I have to. But that's the mindset you're talking about, which is like
Yeah,
not falling into the pit later. So it's like having that, like really thinking ahead. And so,
yeah,
so bringing it back to emerging as an artist, breakout career, right? We talk a lot about startups. We talk a lot about entrepreneurs. I mean, making the connection that when you're coming out as an artist, that is fundamentally what you're doing. You're at a startup business, right? How
yeah.
do you start as a business? Because I mean, one of the first questions is, okay, do I, like just nuts and bolts here. Do I need to have a corporation? Do I need to like set up an entity? Do I need to do all these things? Like, it's just at that point, it's paralyzing, right?
Yeah,
Because like, where's
yeah.
all the information? How do I know what the right thing to do is? Who do I talk to about that? Who specializes in this? Isn't that only to like once you achieve like a certain amount of like revenue or?
Yeah, all right. So let me just organize my thoughts there about that. So my perception of that is, let's say you sell something and you're selling more and more of it, then your next question would be like, um, what would happen if something that I sold in the worst case scenario caused damage in some way to somebody, right? You don't want that to ruin your life, right? I mean, it's a horrible situation to even venture into, but as business people, we have to consider this, right? So there comes a time when you're selling something. Like I actually have a client that creates nutritional products for children. So the last thing you want to do when you're creating supplements or whatever, and she's doing all her due diligence and making sure that it's something that's going to be healthy for the children. But if anything were to happen, the whole point of entrepreneurship is you shouldn't be ruined personally because you're taking an entrepreneurial risk in a professional way, right? So for me, that's when you start selling something and you don't want it to be a personal liability, you need a corporation, which in America, we see corporations themselves as persons, right?
As
Which are
persons, right? Like a
separate,
separate entity, a separate
which
legal
are
entity,
separate
right?
from, yeah, which are
Yeah.
separate from
Mhm.
the individual. And so that, now that's my perspective of like, should I be a company? And an S Corp, C Corp, LLC, LLP, whatever. But tax wise, it's another consideration. And that's not my focus. My focus is
Got
more
it.
like liability and right. So I have attorneys that are sole member like LLCs, almost DBAs, and I'm like what if one of your clients is upset because you presented or represented them incorrectly
Right. I
or
mean,
whatever they
that's a
presented.
strong argument for that attorney to at least be an S corp, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just to take that corporation status, which takes more money, a little more organization, right? Annual fees, things like that. So it's good for people to understand. It's like these aren't hard to set up, and you can actually go and educate yourself and do that. But is it necessary? Probably not. I mean, I know if I post a track on Spotify, it's probably not going to hurt someone, right? Right? But if I'm playing
yeah,
live, if I'm playing live club dates, which I haven't in years, and right now it's kind of hard to find those. But if something falls off the stage and injures someone, you can assume the place has a blanket liability policy. But if it hurts someone, they're also going to sue you. And it's like things
yeah,
happen, and we don't even know what might happen. And that's why you have corporations and insurance policies and all these things because you're thinking of like the worst case scenario, right? A lot of these
yeah,
times. Yeah.
yeah. But I got to say, with all my experience and sensitivity to when it would be important to create a corporation, the truth is you can get so paralyzed with all these decisions that you never sell the thing. And
Yeah.
then that's really what entrepreneurship should be about, is come up with an idea, sell something, have someone pay for it. And then that's like a germ, that's like a very beautiful thing. And don't let all these other considerations paralyze you from doing that, right?
Right. So if it was a board game, it's like you're completing one circle before you're even worried about the actual business entity. It's like it's on your
Right,
roadmap, but don't think
right,
you have to do all these things. Focus on the thing you're doing. It's almost like if you want to write a book, you're not thinking about your book deal. That's not going to write your book.
right,
Getting up every morning and writing for 3 hours, doing something, right, is going to actually write that book. And
right.
so doing the thing itself, and then it's interesting how these things sort of like start forming with the need. Because if you don't come up with it, other people are going to tell you too. Hey, have you
Yeah,
formed an LLC yet for this? Have you, you know?
right. Well, if you think about the two themes that we've already discussed, it's being
Hmm.
strategic, but also selling something. So it's
Hmm.
like strategy and like logistics, right? So it's like you're going to have those two things going on at the same time all the time. But the goal is to be very granular and like, hey, what am I selling? How do I make money at this thing? What's the profit margin on this thing or this service or what have you? And then I want to get to the point where I could be strategic in these things that I'm selling, right? And sometimes you can get reversed, like you can be strategic in the things that you're selling and then you never sell anything, or you
Hmm.
could be logistics with your, right? I'm just saying like that's how you keep, that's the balance is like, there's a time to be strategic and there's a time to be uh, granular and logistical and right, all that stuff that moves the product or the service along. But you gotta balance both. And that's really what an entrepreneurship, and
And there's
that's,
all, yeah.
and I think, and that's where, and, in our previous conversations in talking about these topics, inevitably what's going to happen as for an entrepreneur is, let's say you went to school for some sort of art, you're then going to try to sell that art, and we're talking about art in the global sense. It could be music, theater production or whatever. And eventually you're going to have to become something other than the artist. You're going to become the manager, you're going to become the human resources person, you're going to become the marketer, you're going to have to talk about the art as opposed to being inside the art and performing it, right? And that to me, and that never ends, right? Every level that you go up requires a whole nother skill set. And if you shy away from becoming um, adequate or even an expert in that skill set, you're just going to stay at that level that you were before, right? So that to me is the key, right? And I mean, I see it all the time with some of my favorite musicians on YouTube, right? Like they're great musicians, but can they put together a program where they're going to engage people to sign up for the monthly, fee? Are they organized with the pedagogy of what they're communicating, right? As part of their program, and can they speak? Are they presentable? Does
Mhm.
the new programs go up every month or every week or whatever they're promising you? So like that's so beyond just their ability to play the instrument, right? And the ones that are successful are pulling that off. So it's like every new level requires a whole new skill set, right? Like I'm trained as a musician. I learned how to do accounting. I know how to use this software called QuickBooks. But now pretty much I spend my day in human resources, right? Managing a team, hiring new people. And I'm not trained as a human resource person, but that's more what I'm doing.
I mean, yeah, at some point you start becoming like a manager of process and people, right? When you become like a subject matter expert at that point, it's like you're not doing the thing anymore so much. You're managing other people doing the thing, and even feel top of their game. I mean, it's very apparent with like I know like film composers, for example, and really like artists that do like visual artists that do very large installations and stuff. That teams of like 20, 30 people actually doing most of the work, And it's like
Yeah,
sure they're conceptually behind it, you know. Like Hans Zimmer will write the major themes and definitely does a lot of ideation behind some of them. Meeting with the director, is obviously a great composer, but he's actually not writing a lot of the notes that are being played by the orchestra. His like 8 people that is their full-time gig is to take all his ideas and flesh them out, you know?
yeah,
And so that's awesome. So he's got to do HR too,
yeah,
you know, and keep that team together and motivate them. inspire them and teach them, mentor them, all those things. And it's like it's part of it. And so it's like
Yeah.
having that to look forward to as you grow, right? Um, and I do want to get to one thing because it's my own personal plug because it means a lot to me. I watched this video. Um, it's actually it's almost like a cloud here. There's several things here. One is this idea of a portfolio career, because just to define that a little bit, I guess there's different definitions. But thinking of career in terms of not just one thing you do, is like this linear thing, get this and get a promotion, do this, or start this business, all like in the same industry, right? But this idea that everything you do is kind of like part of your career, and it's whole like mixture or portfolio of different things that you do. And for me, it's very similar to like profession, and I map it out to music because that's something I know, well, or more so than it's like a professional musician that also teaches, right? I know one, for example, oboist who plays for a major symphony orchestra, who also does coaching calls, who also makes oboe reeds and has this like six-figure oboe reed business, right? And she's killing it. Like the pandemic did not affect her at all. It's like
Yeah.
one income stream left, but there was other income streams that were just fine. And
Yeah.
I was I admire this person so much because they didn't put all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And they didn't feel at all. They don't feel at all like they're writing a book too about this whole thing, about the whole portfolio career, how to be a happy musician, right? But it's based on this idea. And it's very compelling to me because I think a lot of people think it's like, wow, if I get a job, I'm selling out. And if I get a job, it's going to take a lot of time away from the thing that I love, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to do it. And sometimes you just make a choice, You're going to spend a lot
Yeah.
of time doing here because it's more continuity, more stability. I've got other values, right? Other goals, right? But what advice could we give to someone who's like wants to do it all or has this idea? I mean, I would say kind of go for it and find a balance, right?
Yeah. Well, the one idea that I came up with that allowed me to be content with not pursuing music 100%. And it's one of those double entendres, because it's like, am I really hiding behind this thought, or is it really a thought, right? And it's the idea of, if you really love the music, how can you really like do whatever someone else asks you to do? Right? So it's almost like I'd rather do something designed to make a buck than to take my art and try to make a buck doing my art,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And so that freed me up, right? I was like, well, if you go to business school and do accounting and take all this creativity and whatnot, and then do something that's direct to making a buck, then there is no uh, you're not not jeopardizing, but like you're not watering down like what you're
Mhm.
really passionate about, right? And so that was a way in which I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense to me, because I love this music thing so much that I really can't have like these people tell me to do this, do that, do whatever. It's like, but in something else. And so it's the same way with uh, well, we don't want to get too much into creative people doing businesses, right? So it's more like, how do you find something for the creative people to do that's artistic and be able to see it be successful? So in my mind, if you can find some happy medium with something that pleases people and can generate some income, that's not such a bad thing, and you still can be happy with what that is. But for me, I preferred to do something that wasn't like a something in the middle,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah, kind of like watered down and compromised somehow
yeah,
in a way. Yeah,
yeah,
diluted in a way, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's to be said. Like everyone has like if, we always say like the musician in you needs to you need to bring out whatever's inside you. But some people uh, naturally bring something out that a lot of people like, and then some people bring out something that maybe a few people like. And in a way, it's like, well, you got the short end of the stick that you something came out of you that only a few people are going to really dig. But like,
But with like the thousand true fans model, right? It's really interesting because you don't
wow,
need millions of followers. You don't need to have a successful, to have a substantial. If you have 1,000 people, right, paying you, what is it, $8 a month for a subscription to your content, that's close to six figures at that point. And
yeah,
so,
but then that goes back to the other thing. If you're going to do that, and that's
mhm,
the long tail, right? Totally
mhm,
see how that can work.
mhm,
Then you're going to have to be like those people I see on YouTube who are developing these programs. Then you have to develop skills that are going to support
yeah,
whatever is that very niche kind of thing. And,
yeah.
and
I
so
mean,
what is the
yeah,
big picture? It's like we threw out a number of ideas already, and they all kind of relate,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
If we were to
Well,
organize it,
what
there's
you
no
just
ideas.
mentioned is so interesting to me because I used to think that what I was doing is like is releasing music. And I had a conversation with a photographer friend of mine too. I used to think that what they did is actually created photos, images and published them. And I've talked to a writer, used to think that what they did is like write books and publish books. We're all wrong because all we're doing is authoring content. We're authoring and sharing content. That's what it is. Content is the thing people pay for. And so if you think of it in terms of content, something that has value, right? That someone else wants. And it doesn't have to be again a million people. It's just someone else wants it. There's always an audience for it, right?
Yeah,
And the world deserves to hear it or see it or read it or whatever it is. And then realize that and just getting to those people. If it stays, if it's not on the internet or some really fantastic other distribution means you have, then it's just not going to find those people. But if it is, and you push it, right, and you put all of that force behind it, you will find people, and then those people tell others, and you just nurture that over time. It's not like a surefire recipe for success or something, but if you don't do it, it's not going to happen for sure, right? And
yeah.
so,
Well, what's interesting about that is, here we've been talking for almost an hour, and we've already, and I kind of just said this before, but we've already laid the groundwork for, like, you think people heard Nine Inch Nails and are like, oh my God, that's amazing. You don't think they had to hear it over and over again, and
mhm,
until it finally became, wait, that's my sound. That's
right,
what, right? So like Trent Reznor um, had to feel so confident, and at the same time he's testing all these different things, right? So to me the pattern has become pretty clear. It's all these ideas all the time, all of them, right?
but it's the confidence to do it. And the only way that someone's going to want it, I'm not going to say the only way, right? That's unqualified. But what I've found in my experience is that the art that moves people the most is vulnerable, honest communication, something from the heart, not something from the head, it's from the heart. And so for whatever artist we're picking, right? And say like this really moves people, at some point it clicked and people's like, I want more of that, right? It took confidence to put it there and all kinds of courage. We know that. It takes so much courage to put something out there. And it also takes vulnerability. And that's the
Mm,
thing. If you can combine those things, like open yourself up and share that thing, and then put the force behind it, which is the confidence, that's something. Because to me, the art then will have like more like merit and validity of people that want it at that point, because it's going to speak to them more, right?
yeah,
Um, it's going to be about more about what they're feeling, not just what you're feeling, And I think that this is a
yeah.
real resonance there. That happens. Um,
Well, and there's also something to be said that if you're so, like, There was a musician, I'm pretty sure it was John Scofield, who came to like maybe it was my college. And he said, listen, if you could do something else, I really suggest you do it, because this is a tough life. And the ones that are gonna really make it to the end are the ones that they're like so passionate and it's like, this is their thing. And, you know, I probably at that point was like, wait a second, yeah, I could probably do accounting. Like my dad was an accountant. Like I probably could do like some other stuff. And so I laid a little seed of doubt of like, yeah, I don't know if I'll be the one who's still doing this, you know,
That's
because,
kind of, yeah.
right. And then just last night, I said to my older daughter, I was like, let's watch Forrest Gump. Right. And I don't know, like my take on that movie is this guy just did whatever anyone told him to do. And he was like persistent about it. Right. And like he ends up a gazillionaire and like all this wonderful success and whatever. And I think that's the message, is that for some of us, we think, oh, we got this choice, this choice, this choice, and almost that's paralyzing, right? And then there are some of us that like, this is all I can do. And in a way, you know, if they are persistent with that, they'll probably get to the end zone, you know, that they want to anyway. They just got to be persistent, right? And they'll get there.
The old,
But I
like,
still think they're going to need all
yeah.
these other skills.
Hey, the whole like 99% perspiration thing is time tested. It's true. I am so convinced that talent means almost nothing. It's a good starting point for people. Like if you have a natural propensity to something, you're gonna pick it up quicker, right? But anyone who's that practices and develops real skills will far surpass someone with talent in no time at all. And
Yeah,
I've seen this happen. I know it happened to me as a pianist in college. You know, I thought I was pretty amazing. And then I went to a jazz school where everyone was amazing. And guess what? They were in the practice rooms 8 hours a night. And if
yeah,
I wasn't in there, like just doing that kind of shedding, forget it. I was not going to compete with them, you
yeah,
know? And it's like you need those practice skills and the habits to do that, and the dedication to do it. You're right. And that's when I found out, it's like, well, I probably don't want to be a jazz pianist. That's not me. That's not me, clearly, because that's for someone else. And that's an important read too. It's like, you know, we heard that. It's like, don't try to be someone else because that's already taken. Like they're already taken. Be
yeah,
yourself and precisely yourself. When you find your thing, your calling, whatever that is, like what gets you up in the morning and what makes you excited, that's probably the thing that's for you. If
yeah,
someone else is doing it, someone else takes it from you, or someone else, you don't have to mimic anyone. It's like, it's all right here. It's a matter of just like drilling in until you really find that thing that is precisely yours. And any artist we like in any genre, any medium, right? You can look at them and say, wow, like it was a journey to get there, but they have such a unique voice and a
yeah,
unique character, right? So identifiable, right? It took work to get there. But it also, again, courage, right? Vulnerability to do all those things. Ah, where do we go from here? There's one other thing I wanted to ask you, because one thing that came
yeah,
up was this idea, this broad realm of like, you know, well, I would say two things. I want to talk about failure, and I want to talk about like coaching, mentoring, and networking. Just, you know, which is like one of those things that you build up over time, right?
yeah,
But that can start off earlier too, and I think for a lot of people, it starts off a little late.
yeah,
The ability of like looking for a coach or a mentor and like seeing that idea, right? Because we think like we have to do it ourselves because we're going to prove something to the universe, right? But I want to talk about failure for a moment because this is a big one.
yeah,
How many businesses that you take on businesses that are a certain point, right? And you probably take risks with some too, and you're working with some startups that are not destined for great success. And I don't know that anyone's are, you know, what are the stats? You know, it depends on how you slice the numbers, but like 90% of companies fail within 5 years or something, right?
yeah. There's another one where I think like a good number of millionaires usually go bankrupt, but I can't remember the last time I researched that one. I'm not sure if that's a myth or, but yes, the idea is that entrepreneurship in general is risk taking. The idea is to mitigate the risk and hopefully not fail. But yeah, it's part of I mean, it's the Abraham Lincoln thing, like, like failed as a senator, like failed for this, failed for that, failed for that, and then finally
Some people
was.
say it's like the saying now was like what fail fast, fail often, right? The Silicon Valley thing. And now it's like a
Hmm.
fail forward kind of aesthetic to it, right? Which is like learn something and keep going. It's like it's
Yeah.
not failure at that point. If you turn it into some kind of like acquired learning that's going to tune your behavior at that point on, there's you don't even have to call it failure. You could like frame it however you want, but it really isn't, you know? And by the way, every millionaire that I know that have lost, they've gone bankrupt, have always become millionaires again. It's fascinating to me.
Well, there's the other one. You pick one.
Every single
Well,
case, every person I know that have lost everything, gained it all again. It's like they
well,
had the skills to do it, you know?
yeah, there's the other one, that if you took all the money in the world and equally distributed it, it's very likely the money will end up back in the hands of the people who are wealthy to begin.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. We'll just find ourselves right back to where we were. That's interesting. Wow.
Well, because some people know how it works and some people don't, right? And then, like, if you want to distribute it, that's fine. Then it'll just end up back where it was to begin.
You just blew my mind. I love that. I love that. Wow. I don't
Well, I
love
mean,
it. I mean, that's like
but then
that's
there are a
really
lot of
sad, but
but
yeah.
then there are a lot of children
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
wealthy people that probably are not as savvy as the ancestor. So they probably won't hold on to it. But in general, that is the consensus, is that if you, you took all the wealth, distributed, it'll just end up back the way it was.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the trick is to kind of know how it works. And you don't need, I can tell you, you don't need an accounting degree to know how it works, right?
Yeah, it's
That
not a
I think.
big what you described is not a conspiracy. And it's not some like New World Order kind of thing. It's just because there's structures in place that people have like engineered to work for them because they have architected a system that is optimized for their goals, right?
Yeah.
And so all the money will eventually come back because, well, they've set it up this way. They've created the need
For themselves.
for the
For
service
themselves.
and the product. Yes, yes. And so I find that fascinating. I never thought about it that way, like taking it through to that point. I love it. I love it. Like, what if there was that reset just to see like where all like the where all the money flowed, and that's very sober. Wow, thank you. Um, so back to this whole like coaching, mentoring, and networking thing. This idea of like going beyond yourself, not being alone in this whole ocean of possibility in whatever it
Yeah.
is you want to do as
So
an
so
artist, as an entrepreneur, whatever.
so the light bulb went off recently for me, because my business partner and I, we have a coach and we love working with her. But it occurred to me that even if she gave us crap advice, just having her on the schedule every 2 weeks
Mhm.
forces us to focus on the exact reason that we hired her, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, that's why you have a coach at the most basic level. Now, this person is not giving us horrible advice. She's actually giving us good advice. So the two together, but even if the advice was horrible, just to have something on the calendar that forces us to deal with the issues that we hired her to help us with, that's worth the amount we're paying her, 100%. So to me, I think that's like the minimum of why a coach is a great idea. It just forces you to deal with the issues that you're hiring the coach to help you with.
And you're right. Just having on the calendar too is already accountability. Um, in so I study at this producer dojo for music producers, and we always talk about three things needed for accountability to happen. If you want to finish anything, you need three things. You need specific goals, and actually we use a framework called SMART goals. I don't know if you're familiar with SMART goals,
Yeah.
like specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-based. So like be very clear about your goals, right? Whatever it is. And then you need an accountability partner, coach. It could be a friend. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it's good to actually pay someone because then you can value the time more and they can be much more honest with you. A friend is just gonna, anyone tells you it's like, yeah, it's awesome. Just keep it no. It's not the coach you want. You need, and then you need to keep to show up for them and with them regularly and check in.
Yeah.
You have your goals, you have a partner, an accountability partner, and you have regular check-ins. That will make incredible progress for anyone, regardless of the medium, regardless of what you're trying to do. It's life-changing to do that. And whatever aspect of your life, if it's like the medium you work in, if it's, professionally, financially, relationship, whatever it is, right?
Great.
It's like I highly recommend thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's like
And
like
then also,
a therapist is an accountability partner of sorts too, in that
yeah.
framework. Yeah,
Yeah. And then think we're hiring a coach and then I'm a coach to my own clients,
right.
right? We're all wearing it. To me, this is what this whole hour has been about. It's like, it's everything and nothing at the same time.
Right.
Isn't that from, that's a Sondheim. I think it's,
Is it a Sondheim thing?
I think it's from
It also
Custody, actually.
it also reminds me
Marriage
of
is everything and nothing. That's what.
it also reminds me of something I heard. There's this really wonderful content creator named Leonie Dawson, and I'm creating an e-course now. She's just like this e-course in 30 days kind of thing. She coaches everyone to do this, and she's just vibrant and wonderful. And one thing that this really changed everything for me, because I'm thinking, God, I'm not a subject matter expert in anything. I know a few things about a few things. So, but who am I to actually put together a course and like offer it for sale? It's like, I don't know anything, right? And it says you don't need to know. All you need to know is a little bit more than some people, and you have a course to sell. And that a little bit more than some people. And I was like, oh my God. So do I know a little bit more than some people? Well, absolutely. I mean, I have something to offer them. And that was the catalyst for me. That just completely started the fire for me. It's like, who am I speaking to? Is the people like I'm not creating my course actually for professional musicians. I don't want I don't want to have those dialogues. That's not who it's for. You know?
Yeah.
It's actually like it helped me really shape the content that I'm creating, because I realized then it's like, it just helped me shape what the audience is, and also gave me like immediately the confidence to do it and the drive to do it. And I think that's true of just like any business. Again, that maps any business we're in, right? Or anything we're driven to do, is like, you don't actually have to have the best this or that, the best product or the best art or anything like that. Again, someone has to want it, and sometimes you create that demand, right?
Yeah.
And it just has to stand out and be differentiated from other things around it. And oftentimes that's enough,
Yeah.
And then it's,
I think it has to, like, I think there's a self-awareness that if people have it, then they realize the niche that they represent, and there's usually something that they can turn that into a business. A lot more people have more power than they think they have.
Ooh. Yeah, say that again, please. Say that again.
I mean, it happens all the time. Like I'll meet somebody and I'm like, wow, you're amazing at this thing that you do. And they're like, oh, I'm just doing a job or whatever. And it's like, well, no, the way you handled that, like maybe it was something social or interpersonal or something like that, or maybe someone has a skill set with presentations or what have you. Like I'll notice it with my daughters, my 16-year-old and my 12-year-old. It's like, well, I can't do that. I'm like, I'll pay you to, like, one of them is great with little iMovie presentations. And I'm like, I'll pay you to help me with an iMovie presentation. And she doesn't even know that she has a business that like, she's basically how we started. Like, I'm paying you to do iMovie presentations for me for my business. You could build a business like that, right? But then she has to think, well, is it something I really want to do? Is it my passion? Should I start a C Corp? Like, I mean, there's so many things that she can do to paralyze her from not proceeding with it. But the truth is, it's good enough in my mind to be representative of my business that I'll be happy to pay. Maybe, well, there's elements to it. Maybe I'm just asking her to help me because she's my daughter and what have you, but she's good enough to she's only 16, right?
Something that has value to someone else. And the marketer Seth Godin has something great to say about this, about valuation, market valuation. Says that, and this is directly to creatives, says if what you're offering to the world, if you're not delusional and the work you're offering is worth more than what you're charging, then it's actually an act of generosity to offer it for sale. And that completely blew me away. It's like, okay, great, right. So yeah, I'm offering an album for sale on Bandcamp for $5, right? I put 500 hours of work into it, right? And so all this time, is it worth more than $5? Absolutely worth more than $5, right?
Yeah.
So why am I reticent about asking people for $5 for it? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, there's definitely some like cognitive dissonance there, right? And so that to me just like really sparked something, right? Because I'm thinking about that across like most examples, like even the one you just gave. Like if it has value to you, it like doesn't matter like there's so many other things that just kind of like fade away. Like if it has that value to you or more, then there should be like excitement about offering it to you. I definitely want to do this for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we get to that's because what does that gig, that job or whatever allow us to do? Build our skills more.
Yeah.
Get more connections, get more clients, whatever. Even if we choose not to pursue it, it's like we start learning how to like finish things, do things, market ourselves, all these things. And not keep like, and there's a problem with like strategizing too much at the beginning, right? Doing all the planning work for the great thing that's going to happen, and it never happens.
Yeah.
Back full circle to your thing about having something to sell, actually making a sale.
Yeah, just make a sale.
Make a sale.
Just sell something.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Hey, Howard, we're a
when
little
you're tired.
Yeah. We're a little over the hour mark, and I want to respect your time. It's 3 hours later for you. And I just wanted to ask you if this is a good time to wrap things up. Do you feel like
no, I appreciate this, Gala. This is really wonderful.
Oh, this has been super fun to be in dialogue about things after decades of collaborating back in high school as musicians, and be able to kind of integrate our thoughts after kind of being out in the world and working and getting a bunch of like bumps and scar tissue along the way that comes with working in the real world. And so before we wrap up though, is there anything that we didn't cover that you would just really want to share? Is there another nugget, something that we didn't get to? Plastic. Okay. That's a really difficult reference. Everyone, you have to watch The Graduate to get that one. Okay. Plastic. I would say the thing that I would want to share is not plastic. Although this may be plasticity, so maybe it maps. But it's the idea of love and fear. And one of my mentors turned me on to this, and it kind of seems obvious, but there's like two dominant forces in the universe: love and fear. And you can call them different things, whatever. Some people call it goo and prickles. Alan Watts does that. I like that, But this idea, and they don't coexist really, One is like repellent, one attracts, and everything that we do, every choice we make is going to fall into one bucket or another. Like our motivation surrounding any decision we make is going to be attached to one or the other. Sometimes a hybrid of the two, but usually it's like really polarized, right? And so a lot of things, what I've noticed is that I know that if I'm making decisions from a place of love, making decisions from a place of like compassion, understanding, and patience for myself and other people, right? Doing it for like giving more back to the world than I take from it, like these things, right? I know that I'm on the right path. I know it feels good doing it all the time. And I know that I'm doing things from a place of fear. I'm not doing myself or anyone else any favors. It's when I'm retracting. It's when I'm defensive. It's when I'm holding back. It's when there's so many things that I'm doing that are just piling up the obstacles for myself. And honestly, not making me a very nice person to be around. Mm-hmm. And so I would just encourage everyone to just take a look at that and choose love over fear. In business, in life, in art, all of it. Doesn't mean our work can't be like dangerous. I mean, all the best art for me is dangerous and scary sometimes. I love that. Yeah. It's more about like what comes behind it, the motivation behind it, the driver behind it, because I think the world just needs more of that. And so
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So
thank you.
Howard, thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really hope that we get to do a part 2 and part 3. Like we'll revisit this and, you know, get some feedback from everyone in the community, come back in a few months and say, okay, so there's some questions that came up. Let's dig deeper here and there. I don't know if there'll be an opportunity for us to post some links to maybe when this gets posted, because there might be some, extra videos and some of the things we reference, things like that, we can put them in.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's, I know that you can find us in the alumni community, and if you have any questions and want to go deeper or something, if you want to book some time and say hello, I'm totally available and love to do that. And so love to meet people in the alumni, organization and community. So
Yeah.
more students. And yeah, this has been great.
Yeah. Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much,
All right.
Howard. Hope you survive the
All right. Till
snowstorm.
the next time. Yeah.
Till the next time. Okay, cheers. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.